We're here with Senior Advisor to the President Trump and Assistant to the President, Steve Witkoff. Steve, I really want to thank you for joining us here at the White House, this amazing room here. Apparently, this used to be Joe Biden's secret special fake Oval Office here, but the Trump White House has turned it into an amazing studio to do interviews like this. So thank you for taking the time to sit down with us.
My pleasure, Matt. My first time here. I didn't know it existed.
A pretty amazing room. So, okay, lots of stuff to talk about here, but President Trump really is the deal maker in chief. We saw him roll out a UK trade deal this morning, and I know there's a lot more coming on that front, but you are really focused on these peace deals that he is trying to reach around the world. Can you talk to us about what the president wants to accomplish, what he views his role as on the world stage here as he tries to seek peace, whether it's in the Middle East with a number of different fronts or in Europe with what we're seeing between Russia and Ukraine?
Well, Matt, I've been asked that question before, and I answer it the same way each and every time. He believes in peace through strength, which essentially means that resorting to violence and war is not necessarily in the best interests of the country and not necessarily the best way to effect truces, ceasefires, permanent peaces, whatever we want to call it. He's the leader of a superpower, the most powerful nation on the earth, and if he wanted to, he could exert a military force everywhere, and he just doesn't think it's productive in many circumstances. And so dialogue and diplomacy are an avenue that he wants to pursue each and every time, because if he can get to a successful resolution in the best interest of the United States peacefully, that's a better prescription for solving some of these world problems that we're facing.
Mm-hmm. So you have a really interesting career trajectory. You had a business career. You've known President Trump since both of you guys were New York business guys.
Yes.
How did you get into this? How did you get to this moment where you are today? Negotiating with the leaders of other countries around the world.
Well, the president and I are very close friends, and I treasure that. I call it a blessing in my life. It really is, because he's an inspiration to me in a lot of ways. Before he was elected, he was being persecuted. 4 separate trials, which I thought were abhorrent, and I said it publicly. I testified for him in his AG case. I came with him and spent a lot of time at the criminal proceedings that Alvin Bragg was running, which felt like a completely rigged situation. And we just talked, endlessly about lots of things. And when he got elected, he said to me, "Would you consider doing something?" And what I always wanted to do was do something that felt worthy, that felt consequential, felt bigger than myself. And we talked about the Middle East, and so that's how it came to be. And I, of course, didn't understand the dimensions of it. now I do, the awesome responsibility that it is. But working for him is an amazing thing, because he sets the table for people like me.
We've seen repeatedly from the neocon, warmonger, globalist establishment as they've come after you aggressively here as you are closing in on these negotiations around the world. We've seen attacks in the New York Post. There was a hit piece from this guy, Douglas Murray. I think there are various neocon-type organizations that are attacking you. What's your response to the critics? Tell us, how do you respond to those guys?
Well, Douglas Murray was particularly frustrating because nobody called me, and they didn't give me an opportunity to rebut, dispute, tell my side of the story. So I think they largely got it wrong, and I think that was a mistake on their part, and so I chalk it up to that. But to me, I follow the president's credo. The best way to respond to criticism is to do good things. I actually believe, I'm very loyal to the president, but I actually believe in his policy. I really do. I believe in his policy of attempting to settle the Iranian conflict through dialogue. First of all, that's a more permanent solution to that crisis than any other alternative. That would physically change exactly how Iran was approaching a nuclear program. If we get them to voluntarily shift away from an enrichment program where they can enrich, to not have centrifuges, to not have material that can be enriched to weapons grade levels, 90%. If we can get them voluntarily to do that, that is the most permanent way to make sure that they never get a weapon. And so his prescription for the solution there is the best prescription. Now, hopefully, that's something that they want to do, because as he says, the alternative is not a great alternative for them.
Mm-hmm. So what we've seen is, again, these attacks have continued from these critics, but another one that I saw out there, fake news, I think it was Politico and among other places, were trying to say, oh, there's all sorts of daylight between you and Secretary Rubio on a lot of these talks. Talk to us a little bit about that. I know you guys issued a joint statement in response to that stuff, but from what I understand, you guys have a great working relationship, and everybody else I've talked to around President Trump that's involved in these talks, everybody speaks highly of you, and they all say the whole team is working together very well. So what's your response to those attacks?
It is total fake news. The Secretary of State and I are close friends. We don't just have a cordial working relationship together. We have a real friendship, a deep friendship, and we confer and we talk all the time. I might talk to the Secretary of State 5 to 7 times a day. And I'm not talking, and that's, on our telephones. I'm not even talking about situation room calls or meetings that we have or joint meetings that we have in the Oval Office. There's no daylight between us, and we're both very, very similar in our policy approach. So I read that story, Matt. I thought to myself, who are they talking about? I could not figure out who they were talking about.
Yeah, it's truly unbelievable. I think that the part of the reason why this maybe is happening is that, again, some of these people maybe don't want a deal. They don't want to see peace reached in a lot of these places. They don't want to see a deal with the Iranians. They like conflict. They don't want to see a deal reached with Gaza. They don't want to see a war end in Ukraine. What say you?
I say it's confirmation bias. They believe they have a bias towards military interaction, and so in their minds, anything that is of a military solution, of a military nature to be a solution to that problem, they have a bias towards that, with no consideration whatsoever on what the consequences are of that. And you hear this all the time. You hear people say, no, we have to go treat that person with force. The Iranians are going to manipulate you in a dialogue, and so you're not going to be effective there. They may attempt to manipulate me. I don't think that they're going to be able to manipulate me. In that particular example, if the Iranians make the mistake of thinking that they can procrastinate at the table, then they won't see much of me. And the alternative, as the president says, will be a bad alternative for them. But you're right. The neocon element believes that war is the only way to solve things. And the president believes that his force of personality, the way he is going to respond to situations, can bend people to do things in a much better way in the interest of the United States government. And I believe in that too.
So the last thing here on the critics, and then I want to get into several of the major theaters of the various talks that you're having around the world, because it's really important stuff. But one of the things that you'll hear them say is they will say, oh, you need to have experts with you that know what they're doing when you're going in to go meet with Vladimir Putin, or you're going in to go meet with the Iranians, or whatever. First off, I mean, I think you do have a lot of experts around. I've met a bunch of your staffers today before this interview and in the lead up to it. But also, those same career foreign policy people are the people that got us into this mess to begin with. I mean, what do you say to those critics that say, oh, we need to have, when you go into the room in this place, you need to have this expert and that expert and whatever. I mean, what do you say to those people?
Well, I think some of them are well-meaning, but that doesn't mean that well-meaning translates into doing the job in a way that is the most efficient. So I think people are well-meaning. There are some who have bad motivations. There's no doubt about that. But I don't think everybody has a bad motivation. I just think that they're used to doing things in a certain way that's historically been that way, and it's very inert and bureaucratic, and it doesn't seem to work. The Israeli negotiation, the hostage negotiation, is a perfect example of it. They spent 15 months working on that hostage negotiation, And we came in, and we means the Trump administration, and we were able to correct what had been, not been an efficient negotiation, and we got a lot of hostages home alive as a result of that. So, I think the president wants things done a different way. He wants a more proactive approach. He wants people getting out in the field. My meetings with Vladimir Putin, outsiders were not invited. Should I have said to Vladimir Putin, I don't want to open up a dialogue with you? I don't want to have a relationship with you? Biden hadn't talked to him in 3.5 years. At the direction of the president, I had an opportunity to make contact with President Putin. He is a central protagonist in that conflict. If we're not talking to him, how do we ever think that we're going to affect a resolution there? It's not even possible. So the notion that we're not supposed to talk to him is totally preposterous, or that I should talk to him and condition those talks on being able to bring an interpreter there or other people there. I did not need anybody there. It actually worked better being there alone and then downloading our leadership, our foreign policy team afterwards.